So this is waiting for me. Waiting for filament stories. But it says waiting over here. I'm live, maybe.
Yeah, you're on.
I am? Well, why don't I see me over here? Oh, hello.
Right. There you are.
Oh, I appeared. Look at me. Okay. What time is it? In a minute. Hello, everyone. We're going to do some more with the palette today. Oh, hello. Let's see. There we go. Look at that. I got chat going. Hi, Robert954. Okay. We're going to do some more with the palette today because last time it was more unboxing and setup. And what my goal is today, and I'll say some more when we'll see, give it another minute since I think I started, we're right on time. So this is a little later than I intended because I ran into multiple things. One is I have this Lulzbot Taz 269 that Lulzbot loaned me, and it is a really cool printer. I unboxed it. Oh, I wish that I had done just a video of me unboxing it because it is the coolest thing. I've always wanted to mess around with the Lulzbot, and I got to tell you, it was so cool because it was very compactly boxed, and then everything that you took apart to unbox it, then you then repositioned and put back together with the exception of a few little orange pieces. So I was going to set that up and we were going to print with the Lulzbot today, but it doesn't work well with Mac and Cura, not on Lulzbot side. And so I didn't get that fixed. But then this guy ran into a hardware error, and I have had lots and lots of hardware errors. I have experience with the Palette too and hardware errors because things happen. It's a complex machine, and that's okay. But how to solve that, I'm really familiar with how to do it with the Palette 2. With the Palette 3, it was something new, and I was getting error 500, and no matter what I did, it was trying to unload all 8 filaments, which is not something it was doing prior. And after it tried to unload all 8 filaments, it would say, error 500, try this, or go check the Mosaic site. So there was no error 500 on the Mosaic site. It stopped somewhere in the 300s, and I just couldn't figure out what to do, and I looked online and couldn't find anything. So I sent a message into Mosaic, and I said, hey, I think there's no mechanical problem with the printer. I'm just not sure what to do at this point. Everything seemed fine, and sort of walked through what I did. And today, as I was walking past it, I looked. Let me go to the close-up. I looked, and I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more, but here is the splice core. And between this and this little part here, which is the cutter, this is where the very sharp razor blade is, I suddenly got a little tiny peek of something that is the same color as part of what's inside the splice core there. And I had thought as I walked by it that it was part of the printer, and it wasn't. It was a little tiny shard of filament that had been cut but didn't come out. And as soon as I pulled that out, boom, the whole thing worked. And I said, yes, we're back on for today. So I want to do a couple things. And we'll start with, let me go back to me here. By the way, I'm still new to live streams, so I've got a chat up here, so hopefully I can get to some questions. But I want to talk about the filament that you're going to end up going through a good bit of as you do things. Let me pull out some pieces here. This is filament that I was using the very beginning. And the first thing that you do and we did in the last live stream is we unboxed, and it said we want to do our test print. And fine, we let it go through the test print, and it did the Mosaic canvas, which it did a lovely job of, very perfect job of as far as I'm concerned. And it had a nice small little purge tower here. So it did as little filament as it could to do this thing, and that's great. But we never tuned the splicing, and that's something that you spend a lot of time with. You can be really frustrated with the palette too if you're trying to do things and you're having, from the point the filament leaves the palette to getting over to your printer, at some point it will snap and the printer is pulling for more filament, but it's broken, And so it's air printing, and the palette doesn't know that it needs to make more filament because it doesn't know that there's been a snap. So what you want to do with your splices is you want to see how solid they are. You really want to bend them back and forth. And this is a really good splice. But some of the ones that I had were just falling apart. They were barely holding together. And so I want to talk about going in and doing splice tuning. One thing that's different with the Palette 3 that I like a lot is the fact that internal in here, let me go back over here to this. You have, what they didn't have with the Palette 2 was this buffer that you have over here. I got to get my back and forth. Yeah, the whole buffer area here that you have in the Palette 3 has a PTFE tube in it. And we didn't have that with the Palette 2, which meant that if we had a splice that was not as robust, it could break inside that purge area. I'm sorry, yeah, not purge, buffer area. And then that would happen. But from the point that we have the filament cut all the way into the point that it goes into the extruder, we've got PTFE tube, which gives this a lot more chance to hold together, even if the splice isn't as solid, because you're pulling from the printer and it's being held in by that PTFE tube. So I do want to look at making splices and then having some pattern print. Where's my little, I made it just a bit ago. Go here. Oh, here we go. I made, let me pull this up. Let me go to 3. I made this little guy. Ooh, let me back him up. I printed him. It's just a little vase mode guy. And ooh, where's my camera skills are bad? Little vase mode thing. And I asked the palette to make some pattern filament. It made the pattern filament. It sent it to the printer and it printed this out. And so there are a lot of ways that you can print with random. I just did a pattern, standard pattern, but you can have it do pattern. You can, instead of sending it directly to the printer, you can have it just make spools. I don't know if any of you all saw Joel Telling had a, this is back in time, he created, it was a clock spring vase that, oh, coincidentally, this is a clock spring model, a big vase with snakes on it. I can't remember, necromancer vase. And at some point it dropped off on the printer, but it just kept making filament on the palette end because he had it in a mode that was just make random filament. And so he spooled it up and he said it's the first spool of palette filament. And that's a lot of fun to do, is just to have this kick out filament and roll it up, and then you can print it later. And I used to have a bunch of that. I looked for it last live stream, but I've used it all up. So this guy, it was great. So I think the first thing I want to do is ask the palette to make us a splice and show how you can configure that over on the palette. So I'm going to go to number 2 here, and the lighting on this is tough. I'm going to see if I can get some settings changes. Hold on, let me check something here. Let's see if I can get initially here so we can see. Let me back here. Let me go back here. Okay, so we can see. Let me zoom in and I will back out. Let's see if we can just look here at the controls. Okay, so if we go at the beginning, we're sitting here. I've booted up the palette and I cannot see here because I'm too high. Lower it down. There we go. Zoom in. Okay, I'm zooming in here. So I've booted it up. The palette's sitting here, and there's some things to do. The first thing I want to do is go under settings. Whoops. Pardon me. Oh, here comes my cameraman. Under controls, and I'm going to do splice tuning. Now, splice tuning is going to be 2 filaments only. It's going to check the bond between 2 filaments. And when you're ready, press start. And now let's back up. It's going to ask for, of the 8 filaments, it's going to ask for the first one of 2, and I'm going to slide it in until it grabs it. There we go. It's going to grab it, load it, and now it'll ask for the second filament. All right, and now we're going to need to see this again. Oh, I need to be louder. Oops, I need to be louder. Sorry. So now we're going to have some choices here. Again, this is hard to see. See if you can zoom in on this. It's asking the three things that we need. One is how much heat do we apply to the splice? The second one is the compression, and that's how much it's going to squeeze it while it's got it heated. And the last one is how long do we wait for it to cool before we move the filament out to the next one. And I don't know what the defaults are for Mosaic. It's all set to 0 right now. So just for this test, I'm going to give it 1 heat, 1 compression, and 1 cool. Now, one thing to note on this is that it's going to be different for different filaments. I'm going to say next, and now you can back it out. And now it's going to make 1 splice. The fan goes quiet while it does the heat and compression. If you can do anything to get that, the screen so it's more visible. I know it's tricky. Okay, it's made the splice. The splice tuning is 1 single splice. So it's now going to push this out, and it's going to give me enough to go all the way out the end. Should give me enough. Okay, it did not give me enough to go all the way out the end. So I'm going to take this end tube out, and let's see what it says. And it says, save to material profile. Do you want to adjust the values, or is it okay? It says, remove the outgoing tube to check the splicing. And then you can save the values under the settings if the output's good. Okay, so it's telling us actually to go to Canvas. And I'm going to show you where that is. I'm just going to say done for now. And now what you do is you actually pull this out. Oh, wait, let me back up. You're going to pull it all the way out. And then what you want to do is, let me come back around here. Here, you can leave it right there. What you want to do is come in and test the stability of this splice. And it looks nice, but you want to bend it back and forth and make sure that it's not, I mean, this looks pretty good. It's actually not folding at that spot. This could be good for my climate, for the humidity here in the room. Yeah, this is holding together really nicely. I don't have any concerns that this is going to break. So this might be good settings for this particular filament. So let me come back here. All right, so it said, if you like this, go into Canvas and make the changes. So that's what we want to do next, is go over to Canvas and make some changes. You may end up with lots. I did a video where I made some sample spools with, and there's a whole bunch of sample spool styles. I just like that one from Protopasta because it's super sturdy and I use them again and again. And I said I have in pieces a lot of those in pieces that I had were from doing splice testing of various materials. And so you will get pieces like this. It does need to give you a decent amount to go out. There is not an easy way that I am aware of that you can say to Palette, I'm going to feed you little, there's sort of a hack, but I'm going to feed you little pieces and have you merge them. So let's go, comments. Oh, hello. From Austria. Oh, okay. I'm hoping that you get it soon. I'm very excited about this. I was really waiting. I'm serious. I was like waiting for this thing, and my son and daughter knew, and they knew that I was waiting for it to arrive. And they both were in school when it arrived. But now, oh, actually, I'm going to go back to 2 here, and there's my hair. When you are done, one thing that you want to do is, let me pull this up. You do want to take this PTFE tube, push it back down in, and there is a little, I'm not sure, grommet, but there is a brass piece here. If you don't push this in, your filament will make in your splice or print or whatever you're doing, and it will get to here, and it will not necessarily exit smoothly out of the palette. I did that once, and I had a hang up. Now, one thing is, while I'm sitting here on the palette, and before we go over to canvas, let me get over here. You will be very familiar with the palette. My husband's in the next room. He'll let me know if I'm not speaking loudly enough. One thing that you want to feel comfortable with is all of these things on the front, you will get to know taking them off. And they have done a really nice job of this. They have thumb screws. So I'm going to, just for the sake of example here, I'm going to take off the 1, 2, 3, 4 thumb screws here, because earlier today when I was doing this, I forgot to put the PTFE tube in. It went through, it made the filament, it got to here, it jammed, and and it bent down in here. So, oh no, I had to take it off. It's quite easy. You take out the thumb screws, and this is genius. They had this at the palette 2 and the palette 3. Over here on the side, if you don't drop it, over here on the side are some very strong magnet spots. And you can take and just drop the magnets right here. They can stand up, and you can take them off. So there are 4 main pieces of clear acrylic plastic, and you can take them off. They're all quite easy. They're a little bit different than the palette 2. Sorry for my arm in the way here, but you will figure it out. This one just hinges up. Oops, I can grab it. It hinges up. And whatever the thing is, I have a little brush that I come in with. Good gracious. It's also quite sturdy, but I've had some little bits of filament as it's gone through, wipe it off, whatever's stuck in here, put everything back in place, and then you can hinge it on. There is another one that covers this area here where they merge, and there's one that covers the feeding piece, and then there's one, a little one right here. This is the one. This one's easy. You just pinch it. The last thing that has a different color bolt covers the, or keeps the splice core in. Now, see, I always lose where they go in. And that you can take off as well. Yes? No? Okay. My husband's coming out. Brazil. I love Brazil. Oh my goodness. When I went to Brazil, I had to learn, this is embarrassing, but I worked for a time for Banco Itaú, which I will probably say poorly, but I had to learn how to say that I did not want onions on something, because there were a lot of raw onions on things that they were serving. And so I said, sin cebola, which is no onions. And they laughed at me. I also learned how to say, I don't speak Portuguese, but I love Brazil. Is this the last one? Here we go. So don't be afraid to take your palette apart. It's designed to get in there. I think they've done just such a lovely job, aside from me getting this one piece of filament stuck in there and not checking it. Okay, so let's go over to Canvas, and the location they're saying to go to is canvas3d.io. At this point, when you have had, I thought I had signed in. Let's see, signing in. There we go. At this point, if you have gotten your palette unpacked, if you've unpacked your palette and have it up and running, in order to complete the installation of the palette, it's asking you for a Canvas ID. So if you don't have Canvas installed already, you'll create an ID. And then once you get in there, it's going to give you, I think it's a 5-letter code to connect to your palette. So I have my old palette. Looks like some 19 projects in there. Get some of this out of the way. Let's see. Oop, I got to go back. So let's see if I can make this a little larger. So I like Canvas. I think everything you need is there. However, Canvas to me reminds me a little bit of, oh gosh, I don't want to say Facebook. I'm not really that great at Facebook, but sometimes I know that I can do something in Facebook, but I'm not sure where it is. And oh, hello. But I'm not sure where to find it. So at this point, let's go I'm going to back up here and go to the drop down. And here's where you want to, this is like the main, if I'm looking for something, and in this case, we're going to define a project, we'll do that. But what do I have? Initially, it used to be that you would have your projects and your materials, and you would have your printers and devices separate. They have something called setups now. So I'm going to go to setups. And in this case, you'll see what I have here. I have the, zoom in a little bit. This is, I was using my Palette 2S Pro with my Mark III. And so Canvas has said, that's a setup. I can still use the Palette 2 if I want. I have my Prusa Mark III that we're using today with the, apparently this is the ID of this particular Palette 3 Pro, and I was in the midst of setting up the lull spot, which it actually understands and sets up, but I was having some issues getting Cura to and the lull spot edition to work on my Mac, and so I'm in the middle of that. There's a little bit of additional configuration because it's not natively happily supported. So the setup that we're going to use today is I'm using a Prusa Mark 3S and I'm using a Palette 3. It also is my default setup. So then you can go back to Canvas here. The next thing is materials. This is, and I have some old materials here. I only have one up here, the Palette 3 #1 that I've created. So all of those other ones, I was creating some, I've deleted them after time. Come back to me for a minute. You want to go through and see what works best. The heat, compression, and cooling of those, you want to find something that works, but you don't want to go overboard. The splice tube, the little splice tubes that they have, they're consumable, and it comes with, I think, 4 extra when you get, this is with the Palette 3 Pro. I'm not sure how many comes with the non-Pro, but they're consumables, but they have worked really hard to have them last even longer. I heard something like 25,000 splices. It's a lot of splices. And so that's great, especially because it's doing a lot of work for a very short little tube. And it is that's not what we want. It is inside your splice core here. It's about the length of the splice core and it's inside there. So if you do more compression, you will probably have, depending on the material, you will probably have a more solid, you're more likely to get a more solid splice. However, the more compression you do, the more it shortens the life of the splice tube. So try out some options and see what works best. I was really surprised that even though the material coming out, the splice is coming out from the default setting, which I'm not sure what is, because when it made the keychain, and it may be 000, even though if I was going to try to make a spool of that filament to then use later, it wouldn't have held together well because of the way the PTFE tube is directly connected, and we have a full, from the point it does the splice, we're inside a tube. It actually worked fairly well. So, okay, what if we just did our splice. We did 1, 1, 1, heat, compression, cooling. It said that worked well. Well, in the Palette 2, you would save those settings over here. You could also save them in Canvas. I was never sure which way things were going. If you were creating filament directly from the palette, say you were doing a pattern or a gradient and spooling it up, or just saying, make me, in this case, when I made this little vase, I just said over on the palette, not using Canvas at all, just make me this pattern. And it said, connect it to the printer, and I printed this whole thing. It was using some setting, but it's saying now go over to Canvas and save those. So this is where, got to find out where it is. Let's see. They have different values for the heat, compression, and coating on that. They may. Okay, this is for the Palette 3. That's a good point. I have not even looked at the G code. Okay, that may make sense. And the interesting thing is, they have no idea what filament you're choosing to use, because when you unbox it, it says, okay, we're going to do the first print, so stick some filament in, and you're doing the 2 colors of, in my case, red and blue. And I just picked some basic standard. I picked silks, but it worked well. Okay, so I created a new, let's create a new material in this case. Let me go back over here. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to call it number 2. Okay, diameter 1.75. It is of type PLA. Style overrides, you can go in and add new overrides if you have anything specific you want to do. I've never used the overrides, but if you know that you need a different temperature or you need to slow down because of that, we'll talk about wipe distance and some of these things a little bit later. But what we want to do is not much here. We want to save the material. So now I have palette 3, number 2. I've defined a new material. And let's go back and think of it in real things. I have regular standard PLA. I have some, and I have TPU. And maybe those are the different materials that I want to define. So I've got different materials, but what we're really looking at is when I make a splice between PLA and PETG, what do I need to do for that situation? So you can get very specific, especially if you're doing something like you've got PLA and TPU that you're connecting. You may want to set up something. So when you go in and define your materials, I gave them very nondescript names. I should have done something like silk, silk eSun. Okay, so now let's go into Splice settings. And I'm going to take palette 3 Pro. And now I've got material combination outgoing material, and I'm going to start with material 1, and I'm going to go to material 2. Oop, did I select that right? Yeah, from material 1 to material 2. Here's where, oh, shoot, I'm so sorry. I'm not on the screen. So sorry about that. Okay, so I went in, let me cancel that and just do that right again. Now I created my material 3.2 and I have 3.1. Now you create the splice settings. Your palette type is, I've got a palette 3 Pro. Material combination, I am going to go from material 1, let's say this is PLA, and I am going to go to material 2. So in this case, now we get to define the splice settings very specifically. If this was PETG to TPU, I definitely want to look at some different splice settings. Mosaic has some excellent recommendations for starters on this. And so I might, in this case, what I did was I did my test, 1, 1, 1, and that works. So now I have a particular setting. So all of that's great, but let's go back and actually do something useful. So I created some projects. I created some earlier that I was testing out, and I wanted to do something that wouldn't be dramatically long. So I'm going to do one that's fairly short and has 5 colors in it, and I'll show you that one. And then we can do another one that's longer. I think before I do that, because that's going to take a little while, I love to say it's going to be a 15-minute, but even, it's very small, even the, I'll bring this up on the screen, but even this little tiny print with a very, with a reasonably small purge block here actually took an hour. So let's do something first. Let's make some filament. I'm going to go back here to 2. You've gotten. Okay, I am going to come back over to the palette, and I had 2 filaments. I'm going to bring over, so I've got this, I'm going to go here for a second. This is the palette 2. If you had the palette 2, I mentioned this in the last live stream. I hated this thing when it first came in. It's triangle, and it has 3 little bars in it. And you can just, I've got it quite full, but you can just lift it up and slide your filaments on it. And I have turned out to love this thing because it's quite easy to load things on and off. And it's about the most efficient way, because that was 4 spools. I've been able, depending on how wide they are, to get 6 spools on it. So it worked quite well. And I was wondering if they were going to have something really wide for the Palette 3. And they came up with, I think, a better solution, which is great. Similar in design. And I have put just little spools on this. This is G&V TNTP, I think. G&V TNTP, some filament that are quarter spools. So you've got the same thing. You've got the bars, and you have 3 locations. You have the first one. You have a middle one. I'm not sure why you would or wouldn't use the middle one. And you have the third one. But the other thing, I almost lost them. But not go anywhere. The way they are both set up is they have bolts here, so you can hang them on the wall, and that's why that you can drop the bars in either way. So I like this a lot. I like the triangle one so much. I I went to the Mosaic store, and I was like, this thing's great. And I was going to buy another one, and it was $30, which was okay for it, but because of the size, it was $30 shipping, and I was like, I don't think I can justify $30 of shipping because it's quite light. So, all right. So let's make some filament. The way that Mosaic suggests having the filament come in, and I've got this up so that we can see it, is you can have it up. You can remove this. It comes off this foot very easily, and you can lie it flat. One of the reasons they have it set front and back is because they said you want the filament in as straight as line as possible. You don't want to spread it all out because it's going to pull. You want to have as little pressure on the pulling of the filament as possible. So I want to see if we can come around. Switch here. Let me go to 2. Okay. Skip. All right, now I'm going to go to print. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go, it's hard to see this, but welcome. And I've got print, controls, and settings. And I'm going to go to start print. Let's see, controls. Let me check one thing. Cut filament palette. Let me see if I can find. Let me look for one thing. Nope. Drive. No. Oh, you can. And that's another thing about this that is so much different than. I'm going to come back around for a second and talk about this. I really like the Palette 3. Okay, I'm going to just go off on the sidetrack here. Before with the Palette 2, you had the Palette 2 and it stood there all by itself. The way you communicated with it, unless you had I forgot, they had a hub thing, and I got in later in the Palette, but the way you primarily communicated with it was you took the SD card. And so you went over to Canvas and you worked with Canvas, and then you came back with the file that was the Palette component for the print. You could send through Octoprint or whatever way you had to communicate with your printer for the printer side of things, but for the Palette, you would enter the card in and say, I've got a print, we're going to start the print. And from that point, it would walk you through, I'm going to start making the filament, and when I get enough of the filament, I'm going to have you feed it into your printer, and then, okay, go. And you get it all configured just the right alignment with, we're ready with the filament at the right spot, go. And so that was great. But the Palette really, unless you had the hub, sat out here alone. This is entirely different. And I'm just thrilled with it. Even from the very first print, when you do the setup, it says what type of printer do you have. And there are some that are included. I happen to have the Prusa Mark III. There's some Creality printers included. I have not gone down the whole list. But it says, okay, I've got your printer. I understand. And it has Wi-Fi on it. So once you have your printer connected on your Wi-Fi, everything is remotely controlled. So we're going to go into Octoprint in a little bit, and we're going to build up a print. And then from Octoprint, I'm going to say send it to the palette, and it'll send it to the palette. From there, you can say start the print, and you're done. Aside from the fact that when you get the filament ready, and it says, I've spliced enough, I'm ready for you to take that filament and insert it into your printer. Other than that, the palette controls everything. And that includes controlling your printer. It's got controls here on, I'm not sure quite why, but you can move, you can move the printer up, down, left, right. So you have printer controls there. Over on Canvas, you can do the same thing. You can stop the print, move the printer. It's I was like, wait a minute, I'm in Canvas. I just created it. I expected to go over and have to do it's completely wrong. So it's totally different in that before I felt like the palette was not very smart in the sphere of information that it had. It said, I have a list of splices that I'm supposed to do at certain lengths, and I'm going to wait for pings from the printer. That's one of the ways they communicated. It was pauses, or the printer would jog back and forth. And that's kind of how I know where the printer is. Other than that, I'm just splicing filament. That's my only job. It's all different now. The palette's in control. You create the file on Canvas, you send it to your palette, you ask the palette to start printing, the palette controls the whole thing. It'll say, printer's warming up. And then when it did that the other day, I was like, wait a minute, the printer's warming up. Anyway, I was really excited. It's changed everything. Like my Mark III doesn't have Wi-Fi. I had to get a Raspberry Pi and Octoprint in order to get that. This guy controls my print. Anyway, I think it's really neat. Is it? Yes, it's possible to use flexible materials. Yes, go look at the list of materials. They say they're, like Peak and what is it, PEI. I am sure there's some things that it may not do, but check the list. It works. Not only does it work with a huge array of filaments, it says we don't have a problem working with them. Now it's up to you to figure out what the splice settings are to bond those. But I remember Stefan of CNC Kitchen had a video where he was working, not palette related, but he had a hook that he wanted to have a coat hook. And he worked really hard to see if he could get the coat hook to print, and inside there to get some, I think it was the foaming Vario Shore TPU, and get those two to print together. And he did that with, I believe, an IDEX machine. I forgot which one. Does somebody know what that one? Yeah. But anyway, that was really neat. Can you do that here? Sure, you should be able to do that. So let's come back. I'm going to go back over to camera 2. Okay, so yeah, I can control the printer from here. Again, this is hard to see. Let me move in here. Why am I not? Hold on. Let me see. Let's see if I can get this. This is hard to see. Maybe there. All right. My husband's probably rolling his eyes. He had it perfectly aligned, and I have just messed it up. All right, so I'm now going to start a print, and let's say we want to do local. If I do local, it's going to search for what files I have. In this case, I don't want to do local. I want to do, by the way, the touchscreen is interesting. I was like mashing it. It seems like it wants you to tap it. Let's see what I've got. Custom print. Okay, so we've got two things here. I have USB and custom print. Custom print, let's see what we've got here. Pattern, random, and gradient. And so all three of these things are going to ask for information. Random is going to say how many, it's going to say we're going to do a random print. You're going to give us some parameters like I want the minimum and maximum of the individual sections to be within these bounds. You're going to tell it how many comes up is, I love filament. I was crazy about filament, and my husband thought I was crazy about buying all this filament. And somebody said to me at one time, I guess every filament has a story. And I was like, wow, that's great. Filaments have stories. And it's true. So I decided to do this, and I was terrified to be on camera. And I didn't want to have my voice, and I was just going to do little videos with filaments and just have some text on it. And actually, Clockspring said, you have to talk. And so he got me talking. And Mihai of Mihai Designs, he is Mars Gizmo's brother, if you know Adrian Mars Gizmo. He said, you need to be on screen. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. Anyway, it turns out eventually I got over it. But so I started by saying, hi, I'm Courtney. This is Filament Stories. But I realized I haven't done that very much because somebody recently said, who are you? What's your name? Okay, so let's go over to the palette now. And so we've created Filament. We know how to work the palette. We want to actually create a project. I have, by default, I have a Mark III and a Palette 3. So I'm going to create a new project, and it will give us an empty area here. And if we look at the settings, by default, I can name it, and I'm going to name it, let's name it, I forgot, upper. This is going to make sense in a minute. I'm going to save it. Okay, so I've given it the name. I have got any sort of settings that you would have in general for your printer. If we look at general, we've got the perimeters, solid layer count. It gives you some suggestions for speed, how many perimeters. For instance, I'm going to back out of general and go to layer height. It by default has 0.2 millimeter layer height. It also has variable layer height selected if you want to have that selected. The plan for that is, again, they're trying to reduce as much in the purge tower as possible. That's the goal. No one likes to see that waste of filament. Infill. Let's see, base. Well, here's where you have base mode. I'm going to leave all of this default, and we're going to save it. And what I'm going to do is, okay, I am going to go over here. Dad says no. Sorry. Dad said no. Okay, bottom of the well. Danny of Mini World 3D designed this model, and he told me about it, and I said, I want to print it. And so I've only gotten to the first part of it, and I hope you can hear me over the Mark III. Let's see if it's going. Let me make sure it's going. Let's go to 3 and just make sure this goes printing. Okay, good. All right. It's printing. It's printing that same little. It's printing. It's printing this guy here, or this little vase. So Danny of Mini World 3D said, I want to send you the model called Bottom of the Well. And I thought, Bottom of the Well, what in the world is that? It is one of the dungeons of Zelda Ocarina of Time. If you played that, I definitely played that. I spent many, many hours on it. And so I said, oh, I'd love to do it, but I want to do it with the Palette 3. And he said, hold on. I'll send you a multi-material version of it. So here is Bottom of the Well, and there is the MMU version, and he's divided it up into the surface. Spread this out. The surface, the dungeon, the entrance, and the cavern. And so let's see if I go screenshot. Let's go to Bottom of the Well. Let me find the whole thing. Where's the whole? Here we go. Here is the whole well broken out, where you enter from the well. There's of course a chicken, and you go down, and there's water, and underneath. And I don't even remember because this was so long ago, but I loved Ocarina of Time. So each of these, and he divided it up so that there's multi-material for each piece so that you can print it. For instance, the first one here is going to be this top part with the well itself. And then there's another piece that is the middle layer, and you've got the actual dungeon underneath. So let's do, because I'm going to go to multi-material version and do the surface. And hold on. Yes, sir. 15 minutes. Your father said no, sweetie. I am sorry. He is in a meeting. Okay. So I have here, my son would like some screens. And you heard the answer. Okay. So I have here for the surface, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. They're conveniently colored. I'm going to grab all 5 of them and I'm going to drop it into Canvas. Now, when I do that, if you've never worked in Canvas before, let me get this out of the way a little bit so you can see. Canvas says over here, single material models. If you have a single model and you would like to paint it, drop it in here. A multi-material model is, a model that, and this is what we're going to do, you have a model that's been divided into parts, and you're going to drop all the parts in. So when I drop the parts on here, it's going to put them in. And this is a mini model. It has them laid out together in the right orientation. So if I select each individual one, here's the beige wood, but they're all hard to see. So what I want to do in order to paint this, let me zoom in a little bit, is I want to define the colors with this. The first one, it says the wood is beige. So I'm going to go over here and number 1, I'm going to go in and define a color that is beige-ish. This is for me so that I can keep things straight. You don't have to do this. But if I'm going to be printing things in certain colors, I like to do this because it helps keep me straight. So if I select the first piece, beige wood, and you get the option to paint it, paint selected, and here are the little wood pieces. Now, everything by default is selected with the first color. But what you would do is go in and you can use the fill, and they are already that color, so we're fine. Save and return. Seems like I've solved the problems. Oh my goodness. Sake select. I had so many problems. I had less hair because of the palette, and I was supposed to do this stream. Is it? I'm sorry, this is so tiny. Fed 3. Oh goodness. No, I mean, it was down for several days, and I was like, oh no, it's the brand new palette, and whew. Trust me, it will be wonderful. It might drive you crazy, but I think it's not going to be any different than a regular 3D printer. So I'm sorry, Fed 3 has questions. It seems like you solved all the problems. Oh, I would love to say it won't cause problems, but it's going to be like a 3D printer. You're going to love it, and something's going to go wrong, and it's going to make you crazy, and then you're going to figure it out, or have to do something to fix it, and then you'll love it again. I mean, that's how I know my 3D printers work. If my computer goes down, it just ticks me off and irritates me. But if my 3D printer goes down, I understand that. That's part of this. The palette too had so many pieces. If you got the Palette 2 Pro, it came with replacement parts because parts were they were consumable, and I had each of them over time break, and I had to replace them, and it was kind of obvious when they broke. When I saw the Palette 3, I was watching the reveal. By the way, I'm gonna peek at this thing. That's looking good. I just saw it was looking good over here. Let me see. Can we zoom in? Look at that! With our random colors. Nice. It's looking good. When I saw the Palette 3, and I was working with my Palette 2 at the time they were doing the reveal. I was on vacation, and I took my Prusa Mini and I took my Palette 2 because I love the Palette 2. And I was watching it, and a part broke in the middle of the announce reveal. And I was so excited, even though I was really frustrated at my palette too. I immediately placed an order for it because I saw all of this stuff that they have in here, so much that could cause problems had been removed. The way they're loading the filament, it's this one loading bar. Before, each filament path had its own loading path, and there was a piece that was a replaceable piece, and they sent you one with the Palette 2 Pro, and they would break, and I had multiple break, and that's okay. And then the way the palette, the way everything's fed in, I'm telling you, when I saw the Palette 3, I was like, that's it, I'm ordering it. Because, and I have high hopes that the reliability of the Palette 3, and it's definitely super complex what's happening, is going to be much higher. But it'll give you grief. Trust me. I've already had to take this piece off because I had problems. I've had to take this piece off because I had problems. I had to take this off here because I had. But that's okay. It's just like something happened with your. So anyway, at the end of November. Yes, I know. Well, I agree with you. Fed 3. I want to spend all my time with this because I am seriously excited about all the things it can do, but I have other commitments and videos I have to put out. And anyway, I'm trying to figure out how I can do that. But one of the things with Filament Stories is 3 times a week, I put a video out on a specific filament and do models with that filament. And so that's 3 days a week. I'm already committed to that. And they're 1-minute videos. Good gracious. The amount of time that goes into that. Today is Grinbot, and he's done, but I still need to make the video on him. So this is Filicube Living Coral. I like this color a lot. Although I don't think there are very few filaments I've met that I don't like. Okay, let's go back. Sorry, I will talk all day, as you might have noticed. Let's go back to to canvas. Okay, so Fed 3, I hope you love yours as much as I love mine. I'm serious. I'm really excited about it. Okay, so we did so far beige wood, which was the first one. The second one is brown earth. And so I'm going to go back to what will be the number 2 filament here, and I'm going to change it to brown so that I mentally can keep them straight. And then since I have brown earth selected, I'm going to paint that. And this is quite easy. I'm going to fill brown and fill it. Okay, so I've painted the sign, the beige part. I have painted the earth, and the earth is a little bit underneath here. Next one is green grass, and I'm going to assign that to number 3. Actually, it's already a green. We'll leave it a green. Let's go in there and paint the green grass, and fill, paint, go in, save and return, and it's going to start looking a little better now. Now we've got a box over here. This is our purge tower. You can change. I thought for a while I could change how much was going to be in the purge tower. I'm going to go back here for a second. There is one feature I really, really want, and I love vase mode, and it's probably because of vase mode. I want the option to have no purge tower. I want, even though the colors on this are crisp and exact and they change, I want an option that says maybe I'm doing a bear or something and I'm doing shades of brown. And I don't mind that it's going to blend through the colors. I just want to let the colors come and go with that. So there's not an option for that. In vase mode, that would be super cool because and you do have that option. If we go over here, there is no purge tower with this. And for vase mode, this works out really well. I don't see a lot of transition difference. Different printers are going to work differently with that, but I think this works really well. If you were to paint this in canvas and say I have distinct lines that I want to do, it would have a purge tower to make sure. Get that a little less shiny. So, but yeah, I love this. I love having the colors come. Hold on. I've seen something like dashboard from Canvas in the trailer. Dashboard. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't seen dashboard, but I'm only a few days in with this, and I have not dedicated all my time to this. We had this whole Halloween craziness. My husband is one of those people that when there's something that needs to be done, he does it. And oops, I'm not here. When there's something that needs to be done, he does it. And he decided to do the entire Halloween everything for our whole neighborhood. Pumpkin carving competitions, best decorated house, things that you could do fairly safely with COVID, and sign up. And anyway, poppets. Every child got a poppet. Anyway, he was very busy, and I was helping out with that too. So, okay, so I am like 2 days behind, and I had this thing, and it was here, and I could hardly work with it. Dashboard. Okay, I'll look into that. So we do have a purge tower here. Let's or it's transition tower as they're calling it. So let's go down. We've got green. We have gray stone. I'm going to go with my next color, and I am going to assign it gray. We're going to do the same thing, paint selected. And here is my gray. Save and return. And the last one is the white cuckoo. I don't know if you can hear that. Someone's doing dishes or something upstairs. Paint selected. And we have a little tiny bird. And what good timing. Save and return. Okay, so there's our transition tower. Now, the transition tower here, you do have the ability to make some changes with it. You can't make it go away. It's going. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on the right thing. Ugh, sorry. I went in and I painted the stone gray, and I painted the cuckoo white. And that's the last thing I did. So now I've got all these painted, and I was on the wrong camera. Okay, we do have this purge tower, or transition tower. Sorry, it's not purge. Transition tower, and you can go in and make some changes. You can move it if you don't want it to be, oops, here. Can I move it to over here? I can move it over here. I'm fine with it being over here. And the space is for the Mark III, it has that build plate area. You can change the size. However, I believe see what happens? If I make it narrower, it knows how much of a footprint it needs. So if you make it narrower, it will go wider. So it will use as much space. Use percent based on scaling. Okay. What do we have? Auto arrange. Okay. So that is, we have now painted the top part of the well. So the next thing to do is slice it. The stream is running behind. Looks like the stream is running a little behind. Okay, let's see if it catches up. The first time I saw what it looked like there, I thought I had a problem. It's actually showing you the path type. It's showing you, they're calling them drives. These are our colors. We have 5 colors. It's giving you the amount of material that you're going to use per. Here are total splices. And where is the total splices, total pings? The pings, I didn't know what that was. The pings are the printer and the palette communicating, and they're going to do that in one of two ways, and there's some configuration, but typically if you watch, the printer will sit very still for just a second. The tool head will sit still just a second. And because no filament is being drawn, it is enough time, and at a certain point that the palette says, I know where you are. And I think it does some adjustment. I have typically, when we load this in and we get ready to go, we're going to follow a set of steps to, it's going to print some of the first splices, and then it's going to say, okay, load it and get ready. And as we get ready, it's going to say, load this much filament, and then you'll get just the right amount, and then it will say go. Well, typically I go over, like by 22 millimeters, I don't know, something. And the first few times I was like, oh no, it's going to be completely off. It knows that you've been over, and it actually, I think, corrects for that. And the palette too did that too. So let's, instead of looking at this, let's go back over here. And what we want to see is the tool index. And that is what it is going to print. Now, we would get a better print of this if we did it in 0.15 millimeter layer height, but I'd like to see if we can get this to print quicker. So I'm going to do it in 0.2 millimeter. All right, send to device. And it says that it's been sent to the device. You can now start a print from this setup. So let's go to setup. And remember that setup is what they're calling the pairing of a printer configuration, and the setup is considered a printer and a palette, because you can have more than one. So in this case, we've got a Prusa Mark III and a Palette 3 Pro. All right, now this is the part that I actually haven't done. Prior to this, I was going over to the palette and starting the print from there. Let's see if we can start it from here. Okay, ready. Select file to start printing. So if we scroll down, here are our files. Hold on, let's do this. We can't start printing. We have to go over and take our print off. So let's go to 3. It's done. Nice. It did not do great on the base. I need to do some, I had another thing I had a problem with is I had, hey, hey, can you take, she can't be in here. Hello, sweetheart. Hold on, I have a dog. Hi, hello. Hi, Dad's not here. Hey, I am doing a live stream. Are you okay? You see if your brother can help you? What happened?
I shut the door on my finger.
Oh, honey, I'm so sorry.
Where's this angry at?
I know. Hey, I'm doing a video online. Can I come help you in a little bit? Thank you, sweetheart. Can you ask the dog to come out too? Sorry. I knew a mommy was going to happen. Wait, don't come any further. Thank you. All right. Thanks. She'll go with you. Call her and offer her a treat. Go on, go on. Oh, she's hungry. Can you give her dinner? You know what? Her dinner's not ready. I got to get her dinner.
One treat.
Okay, so there's a little bit of an issue with this. The bottom of this is not very good. One of the things that I had happened that had nothing to do with this, and it also held me up while this guy was giving me grief. I had a filament get stuck in here, and I rebuilt the extruder, the tool head, twice, because what I didn't realize was that the embarrassing when I figured it out, the set screw in part of the Bontac drive gears had come undone, which is why it couldn't load the filament. Okay, so this guy is done and everything looks good. Now what we want to do is go over to we want to go over here and pick the entrance, and we want to start print. So before we do that, we have to change some stuff out because I don't have the right colors. So I'm going to unload everything very quickly. That was easy. And I just so happen to have brown, tan, green, gray, and white. So I'm going to load those in. Let's see if we can go to 2. Today things are going well because I am here to tell you, was it tan, brown? Oh, sakes alive. Uh-oh. Was it tan, brown? I have to go back and look at that real fast. Let's go back here. It was tan, brown. Okay. Tan, brown. Tan, brown, green, gray, white. Tan. And this is working really well. I think experience with the palette too has helped because canvas, a lot of what you need is there in canvas. Finding it was very challenging for me initially, especially the splicing. I spent a lot of time doing splice tuning. I'm really pleased with how the palette 3 is set up because I don't think, oops, I need to unload this filament. I don't think these splices that we just did this print with are necessarily the best. I think if this was on a spool and wound tight and then it was unrolling with a big print, I'm not sure the splices would survive. But come on. This white does not like to go in. Come on, white, be my friend. Okay, we'll do it when we get there. Okay. Holy moly. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say entrance and start print. The print job. Oh, look at that. We got to get back. The print job has been sent to the printer. And it's already pulling in colors. Tan, brown, green. I'm unloading the filament. And the white. Oh, there's the gray. Wait, oh, I'm trying to load the white. There we go, the white. The white was the one that didn't quite load. Okay. Boom. 6. Are these 6? Uh-oh. What color was that? Did I have for 6? 6 is going to be blue. I didn't know there was a 6. This is interesting. Oh, please. I'm getting it. 6. You want 7? Okay, it wants 6 filaments. I'm not sure. I must have missed one. Okay, your print is preheating, so let me check the Mark III. This is kind of exciting. Let's see. Hello from Ireland. The setup is the dashboard. Oh, okay. This is the dashboard I've seen. Where can you get the 3D model? Okay, this 3D model, you know what? I will find out. This is from Danny, and it's 3D. Hold on. Mini World 3D. look for them on My Mini Factory. There are so many models. I was amazed when I found them. I mean, I want to print them all. So let's see what it's doing here. It's loading them in. It's making filament. Did I print the wrong file? Seriously? What did I print? Which one did I print? I print the wrong file? Oh, shoot. Entrance surface. Uh-oh. We're going to find out. Which is entrance? Oh, this is upper. Heck, what's entrance? You know what? Let's go find out. While we do this, let's go find out what entrance is. Projects. I put them in the test. Entrance. Oh my goodness. This is a very big file. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to see how this goes. We probably will not see the end of this today, but I'll let this run for a while. The stream's running behind by a good 10-15 seconds. All right, let's go over here and see what it says. It says now the printer is preheating. Okay. Now feed the filament in. At this point, this is something we haven't done today. Let me go here. It has gotten us enough filament where it's sitting just out the end here, and that's by design. And it wants us to push it into the printer. And you're given two things. This is one of the things that's different from the palette 2 and the palette 3. Let me go here. Actually, let me go to 3 and I can get it up close. This is the little piece here they want you to put, I gotta get it just right, line in. And it is, when you push the PTFE tube into it, it locks in place. So they want you to take and feed this in and lock it in place, but they want you to wait until you get the filament loaded into your printer. So I'm gonna back out. This one's, oh, this is gonna be hard to get just right. So I should cancel this, but you know what, this could be fun. I have a sticky part here. I am going to connect this through, pull some, load it into the printer. The printer is going to start loading. When it gets down, I'm going to let it get stuck in. And this part, I am not 100% comfortable with this, but it's a Velcro. It's a strong Velcro, and they want you to press it down. And I need to press it down a little harder than I feel comfortable, but I've got it. And it says filament extruding with the correct color on the Prusa. I say yes. And over here it says feed the filament until your printer's extruder gear just grips it. Next. Clip the guide tube in next. Load the printer. And at this point, this is where I was 24.3 millimeters loaded over. There is something called, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. Pardon me. There is something called Smart Load. And we're looking down here. Again, hard to see. I apologize. Let's see if I can go in here. So I have overloaded by just a little bit. And that's because the Prusa, I have it set to auto load when it detects filament. I turned it off, but I still, when I got it loaded in, I was still getting a little bit over. It will do a correction for that 2.4 centimeters. If you haven't gotten it all the way loaded, you can do Smart Load. This is different than the Palette 2, and I'm going to say start printing. Start printing. Start printing. There we go. Start printing. Okay. So let's back out. All right. Let me get here. Okay. Let's go to 3. Let's go to start printing. And we'll see if the first level sticks, since I probably should have put some adhesion stuff down. Hopefully this goes well. Let's see it here. Hard to see. Ah, okay. It is now creating the purge. This is going to be the purge. Not purge, transition tower. I keep saying purge. It's not purge, it's transition. I'm actually really excited to see this thing print. It will be not the right colors because I totally picked the wrong model. I was very impressed with the transition tower from the initial Mosaic keychain. And I did another one that, here, let me show this. I'm going to show this here. So this was from another model I printed, and it is airy and almost empty because that was all they needed to do to make the transitions. So this is, I think, the minimum in order to not have things droop in. But I was impressed that it did that. All right. Yeah, it's going to be a long stream. If you all want to see the whole thing, I may end this and let this finish because this is 5 hours. But I want to print it. I can't wait to see it. So I did print successfully. I'm going to bring this over. I did print. Not the entrance. What's it called? Gosh, I'm so embarrassed I got this thing wrong. How silly. The upper, or in this case, it's called the actual, what Danny called it, is the surface. So let me go. So let's go to 3. And I will show here while it's doing that. This is printed at 0.2 millimeter layer height with the chicken and the sign. And in this case, it has some brown earth with green. The only thing that I was a little surprised with was I was having the corners curl up. Let's see if I can get the angle right on it. I had 2 corners curl up. And I also had the same, you can see it here pretty significantly in the transition tower. And I was not having that behavior. Oh, focus. I was not having that behavior with look at the keychain. This keychain this is the back of the keychain and the front of the keychain. And this is, now I've poked in here with my finger to see how, because this is pretty airy. And you can see here on the top how airy it is. But there was no curling at all with that. And perhaps it's filament, but I was getting a lot. So this is the test print. All right, we're back here. I'm going to raise this up so you can see a little bit more. Nope, too much light.